Welcome back to Upside Down Data. Let's talk about Injective Protocol and how high it could go in a full bull market. So first off, what is Injective? It is a blockchain that's really built from the ground up for finance and DeFi. So it's one of the chains that has super high throughput, so 10,000 TPS, transaction per second, kind of a thing, very low cost per transaction. So it fits into that kind of market that you've seen with other layer ones that are out there that are very high throughput. But what makes Injective a little bit different, again, is that focus on finance and DeFi and also on interoperability. We're not just being interoperable with Cosmos, which is what it's built on. It's built on the Cosmos SDK, but also interoperability with Ethereum, Solana, and other chains as well. And so that's probably what's really caught people's attention, is this more narrow focused, but then good technology behind it, and especially that interoperability piece, which a lot of other highly scalable blockchains don't necessarily have going for them to the same degree. But given all of that, how high do we think Injective could go in a full bull market? So current price action notwithstanding, it does seem like we're in a new bull market for crypto, or at least that's what the data currently seems to suggest. So I think it's reasonable to think about how high could we plausibly go. There are different ways you can answer that question. The way I like to do it is an approach that leverages machine learning and simulations. So rather than trying to just subjectively guess how high it could go based on very little evidence or data, I like to take a more data-driven approach. And so to get into that, the first step of this approach is to build a machine learning based model that can give us a rough idea of where we'd expect Injective price to be at a given point in time. And this model takes in just three inputs to keep it simple. It takes in the price of Bitcoin, the price of Ethereum, and time. And the idea here, the logic of it, is that with the crypto market, they tend to follow Bitcoin and Ethereum. If you know where Bitcoin and Ethereum are, you'll probably know roughly where some other asset is. And then time is a factor just to catch everything else that impacts INJ's price that's separate from Bitcoin and Ethereum. And you see it does a reasonable job of giving us a rough idea of where INJ's price should be at any given point in time. So the white line is the INJ price, green line is the predicted price. But what's really useful about a model like this is we can ask it questions. We can say, in some hypothetical situation, where would the model expect INJ's price to be? So we could feed it a date, a Bitcoin price, and an Ethereum price. Then it'll give us that predicted price. So imagine a more bullish scenario where Bitcoin's up at $200,000, ETH is at $20,000. That would be a predicted price of 307 for INJ, which is pretty darn nice off of current levels. Then a less bullish scenario, let's say Bitcoin's up at 100,000, ETH is up at 10,000. Then we get an INJ predicted price of $70. But then, as I've talked about before when I talk about this approach, this isn't really all that useful. How do we know that these mean anything? Well, really the answer is we don't. We don't know if these are the right scenarios to look at. And so, in my view, the best way of doing this is just do a bunch of different simulations to basically pick from realistic ranges of the inputs. So for Bitcoin, for example, let's imagine that in a bull market, it's probably somewhere in this range that it would find its high, between its prior all-time high and about 5 times that value, 345K. ETH about the prior all-time high up to about 6 times that level, and then dates somewhere in this range between mid-2024 and mid-2026. History would tell us this is probably where a bull market would peter out if we continue to follow similar patterns to the past. So what we do then is we just randomly sample from these ranges, so pick a random Bitcoin price, ETH price, and date from between these values, and then ask the model where to expect INJ's price to be given those inputs. Then gives us a prediction. We record that and we do it over and over and over again 10,000 times. And what that does is it gives us a distribution of predicted INJ prices based on all these different random simulations. And then we can look at things like, what are the average predicted price for INJ? What is the median, the middle predicted price for INJ? So to get into those results then, what we can see is that the average predicted price for INJ across all those different simulations that I ran, 10,000 of them, is $813, so quite nice off of current levels. The median predicted price is up here at about $460, so also quite nice. 10th percentile, so basically 10% of the simulations fell below this, $41. And then the 90th percentile, 10% fall above this value, would be $2,018. And so there is a bit of a range there. And we can also see, if we just look at the distribution, the reason why there's such a difference between the mean and the median is that there are a lot of really extreme bullish scenarios that are not likely. Only a few simulations hit these levels, but they will bias the mean upwards. The mean is much more biased by extreme outliers than the median, which is just that middle price. So in general, what we can see is that most of the simulations fall down in this lower end, but then there's another big swath of them that really goes off to this higher end here. So halfway points here, half of them follow all the way up here, half of them below, but some of these bullish ones are extremely bullish, and that's what pulls the mean out towards it. So let's talk a little bit about what this would mean in terms of the actual INJ price chart. So I'm going to go back over here, and I've just mapped it out. So this is if we went up to that median price, this is what had happened if we went up to that mean price. And we see we're talking about a move of 1,200 to 2,200% move to the upside, which is not bad at all from current levels. And again, that's just the expected price. There would be expected to be some variation around that. The machine learning model is not perfectly predicting price. If it was, we wouldn't need to do any of this. We'd just follow the model. But it's giving a good rough idea of what's going on. So this is a good general idea of where it might be according to those analysis based on what the model thinks. So what's the point of this? Why do we engage in this type of practice? Well, I think it gives a nice way of grounding ourselves. What might be realistic based on the data, that everything we know so far about how INJ relates to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other factors, it gives us just an idea of where to maybe plant our expectations. That in a full bull market, when Bitcoin and Ethereum might go crazy, also rip up to those higher prices, what is a plausible range of prices that INJ might find itself to? And I think this gives us a good first rough idea, so that if we're in that full bull market when emotions are running hot, hype is going crazy, and people are just calling for higher and higher prices, continuing to move the goalposts up, we can think, okay, should we really be believing those moon boys who are calling for example, let's say they're calling for INJ to hit $2,000 or higher, for example? Or should we maybe think that once we get to these levels, we should reevaluate that and think, is it really the case that INJ is going to continue ripping to the upside? Or maybe we're getting to that reasonable expectation for this cycle. So obviously not financial advice. You should make of these data as you will, come to your own conclusion about the market. But I like this as a general, realistic hypothesis. And it's not to say that's perfect, and we even saw that with the simulations. It's not to say the mean or the median has to be the level. It could be above, it could be below, and all of those are possible within those simulations. It's just giving us a general kind of expectation. The mean or median is just kind of, if you had to guess, you'd probably pick somewhere around those levels. Could go higher, could go lower. But I do just think it helps to ground us, that instead of just getting caught up in that emotion and that hype, to have some data-driven analysis that we can think about and say, okay, if we're getting near these levels, let's reevaluate our thesis and make sure it still stands before getting too excited. So again, not financial advice, but that's just one of the things that I like to do with these assets to get a sense of what might be plausible. So if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us over on X. A lot of updates about our models and more over there. And you can go to our website, PolarityDigital.io, to see live data from our models and more.